Okay, so week 8 in CIT 28, and I have a few topics I need to go over today, so I've tried to organize them in a way that hopefully will be helpful. But before I get into them, I want to say a word about week 7, the first item, the first problem set breakdown that you had. And um, I got to read your feedback, and some of you that did the code along felt like you wish you would have done a little more of the authenticate. So, and some of you it seemed to work well. Some of you who did the authenticate ended up looking at the videos just to see how I did it versus you. So it's such a mixture of things. Some use the ICA. So just know that what we're about to do in this week is going to look different because we're going to, instead of covering only half the lecture, and this kind of already gets into the first point, instead of covering the half the lecture and do a hands-on problem set, we're going to cover the lecture in both days. And the reason I did this was because of the way this content needs to be covered in order for you to work on the problem sets. But I've already started working on the problem set, and my thinking right now about the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to give you, here's what you need, here's the first problem set. I'm going to have you attempt it, you submit it, and then once you submit it, you will be able to see the video from me, but you're going to have to attempt it because I think it's just too tempting to just go straight to the code along without spending that time. So just know that, I'm trying to figure my way through this as well, and your feedback has been great, and I appreciate it. So this week, we're changing topics, right? So we've done querying, we've done relating, and now we do designing. And this is going to look really different from what we've done before in the sense that we're building the structure of the databases themselves. So as part 0.5 of your attendance is you need to watch the first 26 minutes. Okay, here's the video. You set up a new folder called designing, so it'd go at that same level as relating and querying, right? Create your new file, your markdown file, add a heading, right? Commit was set up, done, and then do watch to and take notes, right? And use bullets or whatever feels right, but lay down the bullets and or numbers to organize the topics because having that beginning understanding is really helpful. Okay, so that's half of the attendance points. Now I had planned on in the second half today actually talking about the technical interview. But because of something that happened with code spaces, I'm going to have to push that to next week. But let me just tell you this. I have drafted the requirements as far as, actually what it looks like. And again, I'm having to already change some things. But I have the schedule set up. I have the details. So this is what we're going to talk about next week. But basically, right, there's gonna be 30-minute sessions. You'll sign up. I've started with the sign-ups. Now what you'll do is you'll end up submitting. Matter of fact, I looked at this today too, as far as the modules go. So at the end of week 9, I ended up moving it because we don't actually start the interviews, the sessions, until this week right here. Okay. So at the end of week 9, you'll have the option here to go ahead and sign up for the interviews. And again, barring nothing tragic happen, and if it does happen, then I will just have a video covering this topic for next week. But that will be the plan. But they basically start with my office hours. I'm definitely going to work with students as much as I can, know that we have different schedules. I'm not up late at night. I generally can be available during regular business hours. But again, this is something, basically what you do is you tell me here's the time I would, day and time, because here's the deal. You have from the time it opens until the 2nd of December to actually sign up. But the sooner the better. Based on the longer you go, the more topics that will be covered. And then I talk about how to prep, how to sign up, right? You're welcome to pause this. Know there will be some changes as we get closer to it. In a way to help you, I have prepared now the first ICA, at least to help with the first topic we covered. So I'll show you that. That is actually already available. And by the time you come in here, I suspect there'll be more than one available. I've done, basically what I did here is I took, where's it at? Is it at the bottom? Have I not, oh yeah, no. Have I not moved it yet? Yeah, it's at the bottom. So I'll move this up. So basically what I did is I took all the content from the lecture of querying and I put it in an ICA. And basically here what you would do is just go in and, see how well you know this. So this is just, I'm not saying this is what it's going to cover, but going through this will help you prep for that. So my point is that we will have one of these for, coming back here on week 8, is I'll have an ICA for querying, one for relating, and one for designing, and possibly one for, where was I talking about that at? Yeah, somewhere I was already starting to write about that. It was probably my other write-up, but it was basically, oh right, so here it is, querying, relating, and possibly writing, because that will be what we do after the designing step, okay? So I will, at least by the time you get here, I will have had 2 of these ICAs that you can take a look at. And if you want to know that detail of where they're at, look in the assignments and you'll see where the ICAs are at. Okay, so that's what you need to do for that. And again, was not my plan, but I had to deal with this topic. So what happened? We had a couple of students who hit up against the limit of 120 hours. And just a short version of this is when I originally set this up, the way I had set it up and the way I understood based on the research that I did is that the hours that you used would be part of my GitHub organization, but it turns out that wasn't true. And that was very upsetting when I found this out yesterday. So what happens is, and I can't change it at this point, and I'm not sure going forward how I can, but what I'm going to give you is alternatives here, right? So one thing you just want to know is that this 120 hours is on your own account. And this link I've given here, and I gave this as an email last night when I sent it out to everybody. I know you're not seeing this until the following week, but you really want to check your usage right now. So as an example, when I clicked on this link, right, when you go, you'll see this, and if you scroll down, you will end up seeing the code space, and then under the code space you can look here. And this is where you don't want to change the machine, because what happens is if you use more cores, more processors, you use more money. So you can see I use hardly any, and that's because I install locally. Now I'll come back to this in a minute. Okay, but one of the things you could think about is first know how many hours, because now mine's 180, and actually I'm going to talk about that here because I put out a message, and actually I was just getting ready to do it when Mark in this class put out a message that says, hey, you guys can increase your number from 120 to 180, which is awesome, by going through this process. Okay, I have to do this almost yearly now. But I think all you have to do, and I was looking at it today, and I'm actually skipping around just a little bit. So let me come back here and show you what you need to do if you want to. Because this seems like, now that I've organized it, the best path. As you go to this link that I've provided, you click on student. Here's what you need to qualify, right? Complete this part, verify your academic email address, right? And you do all have one, so that's great. You do have to turn on 2-factor, which, by the way, if you don't, you should have that anyway. With your photo, you could make that up, your name, pronouns. So, I mean, not that those are bad things. Those are good things. That's interesting that before you begin, okay? So then you go down here, you put Fresno City College, and this is me having to do mine. So I think that option is a good one. And again, I've put it here, right? But I just want to go through the other options because there are other ways to do this. One is to make a good use, if you don't want to go through that upgrading of your, by the way, there are other benefits too. We were talking about that. Brown mentioned this, is that there's other, and Mark mentioned this, there's other, some really nice other benefits that you get for the student developer pack. Really worth getting if you haven't done it already. And if you have, you're already at the 180, okay? But you can look at this list to see all the things that you get through there. But if you don't want to go through that process, just know, and this is the link here, that there are ways to minimize the amount of hours. Because here's what you want to do is if you're not, as soon as you finish coding, which by the way, a good practice, and I've said this at the beginning and I've harped on it less recently, but one thing I do as soon as I'm finished coding, if I am using a code space, I stop the code. I actually do my Git workflow and I push my code. And I was talking to somebody today, and he mentioned the reason sometimes he keeps it open is because of the having the out file and all that, and just to keep it open. I get that. If you ever run into that and you have a problem with that, just go ahead and run your queries and recreate your proof of work file and just tell me in the notes that's what happened. I would rather you not hang it out there, because what happens is from the moment you stop using CodeSpace, it takes 30 minutes for that thing to stop ticking that 120 hours. So again, what I do is I get workflow my code. I stop my code space, right? And if I need to come back, I will do that. But you can also set, I found this out today too, you can also set up your code space to be less than 30 minutes, which, you know, I just would rather get in the practice. If you can check the links out here, right? Deleting a code space, that's not really retention. Now that's not really that part of it, okay? But I think that's probably in this list the biggest thing that I found was that one. And I think I had maybe mentioned that in the beginning, but it's a good time. So if A, you feel like, and by the way, this is what you want to do. You want to know what your number is, right? So if you're approaching that 120, you want to have an alternative. You want to either start that process of going through verifying the educational status, or what I'm about to talk about, which is setting up a local dev environment. But there are a few things you need to think about here. And so if you want to set up your local dev environment, I know a couple of you have. I do this. I don't use code spaces on a daily basis because I know how much time I need. And even at my already upgraded 180 hours, which I found out today I had, I still want to work locally. But that's me, and that's my preference, right? But what I've given you here is a couple of videos because you have to install VS Code locally, you have to install Git locally. Then you have to clone your private repo, okay, into your local system. And what I've done here is I've given you the 2 videos that are in a series. So sometimes I may say things in these videos that don't pertain to us. We're only having to clone the local private repo, okay? I even talk in here about setting up a folder as an example. I'll just show you, like, here's my 82 or 93, right? So if I was to do a folder and open this up, you can see that I have a base folder, and then under that base folder, I have my 2 repos, okay? So, but for you, you wouldn't necessarily need to do that, but you would need to install VS Code, clone locally. Basically what that means is, like, you're using code space now, where you've actually set up your code space, that's actually cloning. And then what you're doing locally is you're doing that locally instead of in the code space. And then you're working locally and pushing your code, and then you don't have to worry about this time limit. Okay, what's not covered here is how to install SQLite 3. So what I did here is I went out to ChatGPT and I asked the question, right? And actually, I ended up asking also this question about the 180 hours, about if you upgrade. And it said you did, but sometimes, you know, sometimes when I read stuff on chat, which we should all be a little, you know, discerning of, but I did ask about how to install. So I've given you the link to at least to this chat so you could check it out. This is actually what led me, honestly, this install of SQLite 3 is what led me to use CodeSpace, because I just thought it felt a little too much to do for students in a class at this, and it was just another thing you'd have to jump over if you were going into web development. And I would say to you, even if whatever technical career, it is good to know how to install a local dev environment. Now, what's the alternative here? And this is what we did for the students last night who ran into this, is I had them, if you're checking it and you get close, and you're close right now, right? I may send out, I already sent out the emails, so I've already heard from a couple of you. If you're getting close, then the option you have is what they did, is they created another GitHub account, and then I invited them into our GitHub organization and into their existing repo. Okay, and then what you end up having to do, and this is the content I'm putting here, is you end up having to create another code space for your repo. And where that can get a little confusing is that what you end up doing, and I show it here, is like what you would do is use the one account until you get close to the 120 hours, and then making sure you push the code, because pull the code. So you go into the set, because you'll end up having two code spaces for those different accounts, and then you would have to move between them as you get closer to that 120 hours. So whichever path. So I guess here's the question for you. I would really like to know in your reply, have you checked your summary? And I'm curious because I have seen a variety of numbers, right? I've seen from the students who had it last night. I've talked to a couple now, and Brianna reported to me her number, and man, the range is wide. But more important of anything is just to know what your number is. So as part of your reply here, first, what is your usage? So go find it, right? 2, of the things that I've talked about, which of these things do you think you'll do? And do you have any questions, okay, about this? This will be the part that you get these 50 points, 0.5 from. Give me the summary, telling me which path you think you'll use. And if you're like, oh, my usage is fine, I'm not going to worry about it, cool. Maybe it's getting high, my usage, so I'm probably going to go get an upgrade to my account. Maybe what I'm going to do is, be more conscious about closing my code space, right? I'm going to consider installing it locally. One thing I would do before I did the local install, if I was you, I would go see if I already have SQLite installed. And the way you could do that is you could just go into any terminal. I'm running terminal for my and I could do a new, now I'm running Mac, but it doesn't really matter in this case. Let me just make sure, let me do a new window, just do a basic one. And what I could do is just type, oh boy, that is really small, right? SQLite 3 at any command line, and if it drops me into the shell, I have it installed. And if you already have it installed, then maybe this is not a bad option, because setting it up is not that bad. You do have to do some authentication for your GitHub username, but whatever, right? You have to authenticate that, and that's where the 2-factor, I think, can make you, for me, like I have it set up for SMS, so that's the way I handle it. So in your reply, just know, right? So half of it from taking the notes here, you don't have to say anything. You're welcome to say anything about designing. And that's where I will leave. I've now talked about what you need to do for the part 2. So I've already talked about how next week in week 9, the way we're going to do, because it's different than the queries we've been writing. And I have a game plan for how I want to go about it, because I for those who did the code along, and I asked most of you how you felt that went, many of you said you probably could have done the authenticate and then come back and looked at the video from me. And I think that's more beneficial. So I think what I'm going to do is create that structure going forward. And I will have that by next week. Anyway, thank you so much for your patience. I just want you to know this thing with GitHub Spaces was really unfortunate. I thought I had really looked at it right, and doing some more research today, I realized I had missed a particular piece. And it's because of the way they set up my GitHub user account. I thought I had something that I don't. But at the same time, these are kind of the things that you come into contact with. Sometimes you think XYZ, but you find out it's XYA. and you have to make adjustments. This is what we do in life. Okay, I look forward to seeing your summary of how much you've used. By this time, when you get in here, we still will be on September. So the number that you're hitting up against once you're here, right? Remember, it doesn't change until October, which is not for what? Let's see. Let's just go look since I'm curious now. I think next week when I look at this, right? So actually it will be. So if you, if I look at the calendar, let me get rid of 82, right? By this time next week, you will have looked at, yeah, so this will be Tuesday. So you will have at least, so actually in some sense, it's almost perfect because then it shows you that's how much you use this month. All right, talk to you later.